Okay, today we're going to do 11-1, square roots and that's not spelled right. Irrational numbers is what that's supposed to say. I forgot an A in there. Okay, irrational numbers. So, perfect squares, okay, the square of an integer. So, if you have, let's say, the number 5, and you square it, so that becomes 5 times 5, that equals 25. So what it's saying is 25 is a perfect square. Okay, if you have 6 squared, which is 36, then 36 is a perfect square. The square root is the inverse of squaring a number. So if you want to go back, okay, if you take the square root of 25, it takes you back to 5. If you take the square root of 36, it takes you back to 6. It's saying what times itself gives you 25 and what times itself gives you 36. It's the opposite of squaring something. Okay, and it's called a perfect square because if you actually have a square that's 2 by 2, it actually makes a square. 3 by 3 would give you 9. 4 by 4 would give you 16. It actually makes a square. That's why they're called perfect squares. Okay, so if we just said, what is the square root of 64? You simply just answer it. What times itself equals 64? 8. 8 times 8 equals 64. Now if there's a negative out in front, then your answer is going to be negative. What is the square root of 121? It's 11, but there's this negative out front, so the answer is going to be negative 11. Okay? Now, estimating a square root is exactly what it means. Okay? The square root of 8 is not perfect. I don't know what the square root of 8 is, but we could figure out what it's in between. Okay? So if you think of two numbers next to it that are perfect, so, well, let's not do that. Well, let's say the square root of 4 and the square root of 9 are both perfect squares. Okay, this is 2 and this is 3. Okay, so we know the square root of 8 is close to the square root of 9. Okay, so you know it's going to be close to 3. Okay, so you would say the square root of 8 is about 3. If it was closer to the square root of 4, you would say it's about 2, but it's the square root of 3. Okay, and this is obviously if you don't have a calculator. Okay, so this negative the square root of 27. Okay, again, we're estimating. Well, we know the square root of 25 is perfect, and the square root of 36 is perfect. Which one is 27 closer to? Well, it's closer to the 5, so you would say that negative the square root of 27 is about negative 5. Okay, because these are actually negatives over here. Right. All right, so you just say what it's about. Okay, moving on. Irrational numbers. So we've dealt with rational numbers. Rational numbers are numbers that are nice and neat. Okay, they have a decimal, but they either terminate, which means they end, like 0.25, or they repeat, like 0.33333. Okay, so irrational numbers, so what's a good definition? I'm just going to say decimals that do not end or repeat. Okay, so anytime you take the square root and it's not a perfect square, it's irrational. So the square root of 18, I'm feeling my teeth. The square root of 18 is not a perfect square, so you would say this is irrational. I'm just going to put an I there, irrational. 432.8, it ends, so that's rational. The square root of 36 is really 6, so that's rational. This is a pattern, 0.12, 0.12, let's say this is repeating. It just keeps going on. That's rational because it's repeating a pattern. Okay? This number right here that I made up is irrational because it doesn't have a pattern. And just because there's two numbers, there's the 1 and then the 1, that does not mean it's repeating. Okay? It's just the pattern has to keep repeating. Okay? Just because you see two numbers. If you have pi pi is irrational. Okay? If you have 1/3, that is rational. Okay? Moving on. Use the formula D equals the square root of 1.5h to estimate the distance in miles if h is 10. So here it tells us h is 10. We're just plugging h in. So D equals the square root of 1.5 times 10. Square roots are kind of like parentheses. You want to do what's underneath first and then solve it. So the square root, 1.5 times 10 is 15. Okay, now it says estimate. So the square root of 15 is not a perfect square. Okay, the square root of 16 is, and the square root of 9 is, I went blank there, which is closer to the square root of 16, which equals 4. So D is about 4. Okay, 4 miles, because you're just estimating. Right? And that's it. Here's your little comic.